call the Board of Supervisors meeting to order for this special open house meeting. Can I get a move?
So moved.
Been moved. And
Second.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you so much. Again, for the record, my name is Kelly Davis, and I am the planning director with the Berkeley Group, the consulting firm that has been working with Greensville County to develop the draft comprehensive plan. And we are very excited to be before you tonight in this unveiling of the plan. We'll talk through, and for the benefit of the public that may be here or viewing online, we'll go ahead and share some of the strategies. I'm sure the board and planning commission members will be very familiar with this by now, but we'll give a summary of the work that we've done so far, have an opportunity for questions, and then we'll have an open house component where there will be time after this presentation if there's any questions, or to look at some of the boards or the future land use map in closer detail. So that moves us to our agenda for tonight. So I'll start with a presentation that will review a little bit about the comprehensive plan and the update process. We'll review the contents of the plan and then talk about next steps.
A copy of the presentation is included in your binder on the left-hand side.
Yes, and perhaps the light, yes, thank you. That'll be helpful. All right, so what is a comprehensive plan? This is the community's roadmap for the future. It is the official adopted policy document that provides the long-range direction for things like land use, transportation, and economic development. It should provide your framework to evaluate and direct community investment, growth, and development over the next 20 years. The comprehensive plan is guided by community input, and it serves as that future vision and decision-making guide. The thing that we want to recognize with the comprehensive plan is that it is not a regulation like your zoning or subdivision ordinance, but it provides the foundation for those regulatory tools, and it should be coordinated with other studies. So as we developed this plan, we were looking at the regional rural transportation plan, the local regional hazard mitigation plan, and other things like that all tie into your comprehensive plan. The county's authority and responsibility to undertake a comprehensive plan lies with state code. It is legally required to review the comprehensive plan every 5 years. As a best practice, we recommend that you do that more frequently, that you use it with your land use development, your special exceptions, all of these things, that it's just part of that set of planning tools that you rely on a regular basis. Next slide is an overview of what is in the comprehensive plan. So this is the top set of topics that is in Greensville County's comprehensive plan. We start by an assessment of a community-driven vision based off of community input, and then we look at things like demographics. There's a chapter on natural resources, housing, quality of life, economy, infrastructure, transportation, and land use. And I will review each of those in more detail through this presentation. And next slide. This is a basic overview of the process that we have been through to date. We started out reviewing your plan. We provided a diagnostic of the current plan, identified those elements that we were going to continue and carry forward, and those that would need to be updated or modified. We conducted 2 public workshops, stakeholder interviews with developers, real estate agent, the public school system, and then we had a community-wide survey that helped guide some of the different policies that we have been included in this comp plan. Then we worked through drafting, and all of you have been a part of that process. We've had many meetings. There's been a little bit of start and stop as we've gone through this process during a global pandemic, but I think it shows our resilience that we were able to be here tonight and present this draft plan. And that's where we are. We're at the public review and refinement period, and we'll look forward to any comments. We'll have an opportunity for you all to share this plan with your constituents, collect any feedback, and then we'll meet with you all again, ideally in January or early February, to go over any changes that might be needed before we move to public hearing. So thinking back to those public workshops and the community surveys, I think it's always good to remind ourselves of what the community had to say at the start of the process. Some of the top desires for the future of the county were improving public schools and education. I know that there were steps ongoing through this process. We wanted to recognize that through this plan and continue to support the improvement of the public schools. Economic development and job growth was one of the very top priorities for the community. You all have already made great investments in infrastructure with the Maymac site, and so we want to continue to encourage and spur that growth in the community, along with workforce development, which again, the county is really blessed to have the community college here and partnering with that asset. Expanding access to broadband is another area where the county, at the start of this process, was a strong demand and has continued to make steps through this process to take advantage of available grants and funding sources. Affordable housing, access to recreation, and small businesses, particularly retail and commercial recreation, were all some of those top desires for the future. On the right-hand side of this slide, these are a few of the items that I pulled directly from the community survey. Rural character and open space was one of the things that the community valued most. Lack of job opportunities ranked highest in terms of what people were most concerned about for the future. Public schools was the top priority for public facility investment. And then generally, because of course your comprehensive plan is a development tool, we asked where should growth be directed, and that was around Emporia, and then second, a pretty far second, was around Jarrett. And taking all of that together, we worked with the board and planning commission to establish this vision for the comprehensive plan. So as a forward-thinking community with strong family values, Greensville County will support job creation, education, and high quality of life that strengthens our economy, encourages strategic growth, while becoming a closer bound community sensitive to the needs of all of our citizens. So we're reflecting on all of those things that we heard during community engagement and drawing it into what Greensville County might look like in 2040. The next set of slides will be an overview of the policy chapters of the plan. Each chapter includes a goal statement. This is the goal statement for natural environment. And so this is our overarching goal, how we're going to move through, what policies we want to support that overarching vision, and then each chapter also includes strategies to support this goal. So for natural environment, as you might expect, we're thinking about things like protecting ecologically sensitive areas, promoting the viability of the agricultural economy, and encouraging outdoor recreation. Just a few notes on this particular chapter. We're really tying back to the fact that rural character was important to county residents through the survey, and that the respondents to that survey listed rural character and open space, as well as the natural environment, as the qualities that they most valued in Greensville. Those were among the top items. These conditions that we talk about also shape development, and so that's one of the reasons why they're very important to consider and know where these different assets or environmental constraints are so that we can inform development. And this chapter does include an inventory of things like topography, soils, geology, water resources, among others. next slide is just a little brief introduction to the existing conditions that we've highlighted in the natural environment chapter. I'd encourage you to take a closer look at some of the maps that are included in that chapter. We also, I'll take a brief note to highlight over on the right-hand side of the room are some different, there's a different fact sheet, if you will, for each of the chapters. So there's some additional data that's set up over there as well. In terms of the natural environment for Greensville County, largely forested with wetlands and cropland as well. The important water resources being the Nottoway River and the Marin River that provide recreational, economic, and environmental value for the community, as well as supporting your water system. You've also want to note that you have several high quality areas for natural habitat. The map on the bottom right in the dark red kind of shows some of those outstanding habitats that are deserved of being protected for the future. And there was also recognition in drafting this chapter that there is a need for more adaptive and sustainable development practices in the county as we look forward to the next few years. And that brings us to the strategies for natural environment. These strategies focus on things like water resources and quality. Definitely there was a desire to provide greater access to those water resources for recreation opportunity, as well as promoting better watershed, stormwater runoff, and floodplain management, as well as identifying septic systems that might be contributing to water degradation, water quality degradation. Another large part of this chapter is devoted to land conservation, primarily with the idea of protecting open space and rural character, as well as supporting the agricultural economy that has sustained this community. Next policy chapter is on housing. So the goals for this chapter, the goal encompasses for this chapter housing rehabilitation and infill development, ensuring that new development is consistent with the existing neighborhoods and the existing quality of housing, and then also wanting to expand and promote more diversity in different types of housing, that those would all be high quality, but perhaps some different types of housing that would be affordable to residents. A few notes on existing conditions related to housing. From what we've seen with the data that we had at the time, there are high home ownership rates here in the county, but the county recently has seen limited new residential development. There are increasing housing values year over year through in Greensville County. The map on the bottom right hand of the slide shows your housing locations. So you've got a concentration of housing density in those areas that the community said that they were interested in seeing development be directed around Emporia and around Jarrett. You do have an aging housing stock, which lends itself to strategies to continue to promote housing rehabilitation. And then also just a note that the county should really be commended on its past housing efforts with the Washington Park neighborhood, and kind of the impressive and award-winning work that was done in that community. Key strategies for housing, as I mentioned before, with an aging housing stock, that's really an indicator of needing to promote rehabilitation, maintenance, and modernization of homes. One of the great ways to do that is to connect homeowners with available funding sources that are available from the state. And so there's some ideas and strategies in the plan on how to do that and different resources that are available. We heard a strong desire to continue to promote that high level of home ownership as a path to economic wealth and community building. A few other ideas for this chapter include streamlining any permitting processes for residential development, a desire to promote more senior and multifamily housing, particularly within areas that have infrastructure to support that. And in those same areas where we have infrastructure and more dense development, providing sidewalks, lighting, and crosswalk to promote more livable communities, among other strategies. The next chapter is on quality of life, and this considers the different community assets, both public and private, that contribute to the quality of life and level of satisfaction and happiness that citizens experience in their community. This chapter discusses things like government and social services, education, recreation, health, public safety and transportation, and also things like cultural, social, and religious engagement and opportunity in the community. A few notes on the existing conditions related to quality of life include that there's a higher senior population than the state level, so we might want to be thinking about how we can encourage people to or create a community where folks can age in place. The youth population is on track with the state, so that's a good thing that you've got a young population as well. On maybe a downside, there's lower reported physical activity than the state level, and so that really emphasizes the need to promote recreation in the community, and we've talked about that quite a bit through this process. Also, on a high note, the property crime rates have trended downward, so that's a good sign. Generally, community facilities are concentrated near Emporia. This chapter has a number of maps that folks can reference for where those community facilities are located. A few highlighted on the screen here are the fact that it's really great that the county, that the area has access to the Bon Secours Hospital, the schools, the community college. One of the things that was talked about quite a bit and advocated as an asset in the community was the Eagles Scholarship that covers 100% tuition for 2 semesters for any county high school student. In addition, the good access to library services and the Marin River Arts Council. Some of the strategies in this chapter included things like government partnerships, continuing that strong relationship between Emporia and Greensville County to provide those shared services. In addition, making sure that we maintain our existing facilities. Public information was something that was highlighted during the public outreach as we collected a variety of ideas of how the county might better interact with its citizens. One of the ideas also was online services, which you might be able to check that one off already because you guys have just updated your website and it looks really great. A few of the other strategies shown on this slide and that y'all can read through as well. There was the desire from the community to reconsolidate the elementary schools into a single facility, implementing the results of the high school feasibility study, conducting either a park survey or some kind of needs assessment to see what the priority should be for parks and recreation. We heard from the community survey that recreation was important, but we didn't get into the fine-grained details of what the community was really looking for when it comes to recreation. That said, we know we want to make sure we are adding new amenities to our parks and keeping those up to date and maintained. Additionally, there's a need for a public safety assessment, and we also heard from the community survey about the desire for more public transportation service, and I was just informed by staff today that that route has recently been updated as well with the addition of Walmart added to the stops. So the next chapter is on infrastructure. Greensville County has really made infrastructure a priority in the previous comprehensive plan and is now experiencing the infrastructure developments that are introducing new economic possibilities to the area. This chapter is outlining some of those previous accomplishments, as well as identifying how those opportunities have led to new assets in the community and how we can continue to draw those to the public service to the benefit of the citizens. In terms of existing conditions, these are just a few of the things that are highlighted in this chapter. We identify a map that shows where the existing service areas are, the 2 water treatment plants, 4 sewer treatment plants, the 11 refuse collection sites that also offer recycling. And recently, we've learned that there's 10 years left to max landfill capacity. That's something that we're going to have to be dealing with over the course of this particular plan. Of course, also this chapter discusses the ongoing broadband efforts in the community. Some of the key strategies for this chapter are the public water and sewer expansions in the urban service areas. This urban service areas map, I do want to just note to the board and planning commission that in a meeting today with staff, we were just talking through some potential changes to this. So this will be one of the maps that I'll draw your attention to in the next work session, and so that we can identify some of the ways that this map has changed, mainly to align more closely with our future land use map. Also, other strategies include supporting the Water and Sewer Authority's capital improvement program, ensuring we're providing reliable, effective, and affordable internet access, supporting telecommunications cell structures to improve service throughout the community, recognizing that it's not just about internet, but cell phone service is important as well. There was also a desire to explore natural gas feasibility for both commercial, industrial, and residential customers. That landfill study is going to be important, as well as a desire to expand recycling infrastructure and using the siting agreements for solar, if pursued, to expand that infrastructure. The next chapter is economy, and I always like to say that a comprehensive plan is, at least in some ways, the community's economic development plan. It's not the only thing you do to support economic development, but ideally your land use plan will support economic development. Due to the significant infrastructure investments, Greensville County is ripe for economic progress and transition. We see a lot of potential in the next 20 years in the life of this plan for economic opportunity, particularly with the Maymac site. And so this chapter discusses past and current trends and then strategizes how the community can take full advantage of the new opportunities and infrastructure. This image on the right-hand side of the screen just shows a breakdown of the different total jobs in the community. So with manufacturing and public administration being quite high, along with healthcare and social assistance, likely related to the hospital. In terms of existing conditions, you've got net in commuters to the community. There's definitely a lot of back and forth between Emporia and Greensville, but we're also seeing employees or people taking jobs from other communities. So that's something that we need to think about. How can we make sure that Greensville County residents have access to jobs in Greensville County as well? Net in commuters can be a really good thing for a community. It means you have jobs here that other people want, but we also want to make sure that our citizens can have access to those, whether it's via training, workforce development, or just connecting employers to our students. A really good sign is that there was a higher growth in annual wages in Greensville County than Virginia and the U.S. overall since 2015. You also have the 1,600-acre Maymac site ready for development. There's great access to transportation and infrastructure. Some of the needs that we saw were potentially the need for a smaller scale industrial park to support users that might need the 25 to 50 acres. Excuse me. And just another note is that you have many existing incentives already in place that we would recommend for communities. So the map on the right-hand side of the screen shows some of the different incentives that you have. Your entire county is part of the tobacco indemnification and revitalization area and hub zone. You've got an enterprise zone in the community, as well as the northern half of the community being an opportunity zone. So this allows developers and employers to have access to state funds and federal funds, as well as local funds like facade improvement grants through these different programs. And then, of course, we'd be remiss not to mention the Southside Virginia Community College as a partner in workforce development. When we talked with them, they identified a really strong history of being able to link their students with employers when that employer was there with a need for jobs. So we have that as a tool and pipeline should another employer with those needs arise. All right, so some of the key strategies for the economy chapter, we talked through some of these previously. But things like connecting your local farmers to markets, the figure on the screen now, I think it's probably hidden underneath some of the slides that you all have in your packet, but is an example of a program. This one's out of West Virginia that links agricultural producers to particular markets. For instance, a locally grown market in Richmond, for example. We also identified a way to, or a suggestion or strategy to promote those business incentives that you have, make it as easy as possible for potential employers or developers to know about those incentives. There are also two local incentives that if you would like to add additional tax benefits to bring or encourage investment in your community, there's the technology and tourism zones are two additional opportunities through the state that you could adopt. In addition, there's some strategies related to industry with regard to workforce development, continued marketing for the Maymac site, and then that additional small-scale industrial park. This is your existing Maymac website, which is a really nice website that shows the development and build out. Other strategies related to economy was actually supporting that commercial and small business side. So we've got Maymac to support the large employers, and what about those small businesses? So definitely continuing to advocate for the revitalization efforts in Emporia, because that is bound to bolster development here in Greensville County as well. Supporting commercial expansion and a buy local campaign. So these images are one of Mecklenburg County, I think, has a good array of different marketing tools to support their local businesses and economy. And some of the other cross-cutting strategies in this chapter are related to broadband to support teleworking, education, improving your schools, and then zoning and land use to support the economy. Next up is transportation. And this chapter identifies your existing transportation network. We want to maintain those current road and rail networks that support economic development in the community while expanding public transportation and also, where feasible, upgrading pedestrian infrastructure. There's some constraints to that, unfortunately. with regard to the pedestrian infrastructure, but as a goal, we want our communities to be livable and connected and walkable. In terms of existing conditions, I think you all could probably give this slide yourself, but we've got access to major highways connecting to large urban areas, 2 corridors of statewide significance with being really important in your community. You have a really great public transit system that there's an image in this chapter that shows that Greensville County's public transit had among the largest growth in the state in its time. We also have seen some expanded pedestrian infrastructure, and you've got great access to the major railroad for freight and then the airport with capacity for growth. Key strategies in this chapter really focus mostly on maintenance. There's not a lot that the county can do since the roads are state maintained, but we've got some ideas up there in terms of coordination with Vdot. Was also talking with staff today about the designation of an urban development area as part of this comp plan that we're going to talk with Vdot to see if that would be something that they would accept, which basically in your more urbanized areas, that would give you access to more grant funding for transportation improvements. So we're going to see if we can go ahead and do that as part of this process. Other strategies include airport maintenance and aviation business expansion, making sure to promote the airport as part of your other economic development marketing. Pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, primarily around the schools where it's permitted. And then also considering transportation alternatives like expanding the fixed route and on-demand transit, just making sure that bus map is readily available to citizens. And then something like e-vehicle charging stations, which when you hear about that, it might not seem like a lot, but it can be a way to draw people off the interstate and get them to shop in your stores here in the county, eat in your restaurants. This chapter also includes a list of priority transportation projects. I'd encourage you to visit that map and that list. These are primarily, the short-term projects are primarily with regard to intersection safety improvements, pavement markers, and warning signs. Midterm projects include sidewalks and safety improvements on a number of roads throughout the county. And this is the map of those projects. You may be able to see that a little bit more easily in the plan itself. We do have this map over on the boards on the right-hand side of the room as well. And last but not least, perhaps most importantly, is land use. So as I mentioned at the start of the presentation, the community continued to support the idea of concentrating new development around the urban centers, Emporia and Jarrett as well, in major transportation intersections. We want to support the agricultural economy to retain that rural character, and the land use chapter provides us with the path to do that. Some of the key strategies in this chapter are looking at your zoning ordinance. Always after completing a plan update, it's important to review your zoning ordinance for any changes. Generally, this plan aligns with the current zoning ordinance. We didn't hear a lot from the community about wanting to make many changes to development densities or anything like that. So we've retained what you had from your current plan with regard to that, although we have added some ideas for design principles for new development that might come in. So if you haven't had a chance to look through the different land use categories and some of those design principles, I would encourage you to do that. Along with that, we in the county would continue to encourage infill development, discourage anything that would be detrimental to the rural character or environment, and create connected neighborhoods, again, where possible. We want to be able to bring that physical activity that was low compared to the state and the community's expressed desire for recreation, and be able to offer opportunities for them to do that. And connected neighborhoods with sidewalks or trails is a great way to do that. A few ideas for implementation and community character as well. Things like encouraging cluster housing, high quality architecture and landscaping, and plan development with common design themes. So I'll briefly touch on future land use. The future land use map can be found over on the right-hand side of the screen, and we have a larger version of that in the back of the room as well, if it's too small for you in the plan. So generally, we've identified and given a little more detail in how these different future land use categories should be determined. So things like land use, access, and resource protection. And each category includes these determinants of what you might consider should someone come in for a rezoning to one of these categories, what the different uses should be in each category, and then what design principles might need to be considered in the category. So those design principles are things like site design, parking and access management, the location of landscaping, buffers, and screening, and open space and amenities, and which uses might need those types of tools. And this briefly, again, is a summary of the different land use categories that were shown on that previous map. We've got rural areas that include the rural residential conservation, which is really the majority of your county is that rural residential conservation area. Rural hubs are areas within that rural residential conservation area, that's a mouthful, that are more appropriate for higher density development, or a few small shops, maybe a gas station, that kind of thing. Some local serving uses in your conservation and rural areas. Flood hazards overlay are important areas for environmental protection. Then the next category is residential areas, which include low density residential and medium density residential. These areas are primarily concentrated around Emporia, and we have expanded the residential areas, particularly the low density residential areas, just a little bit in this plan to reflect some of the new opportunity based off of infrastructure investments or anticipated utility expansions over the life of this plan. Active development areas include commercial, industrial, mining, and extraction. We have removed one of the previous mining and extraction sites that's no longer in use from the plan, so that's one of the changes. And then public use areas include the public, semi-public uses, things like churches and schools, and then parks and recreation. And then the final chapter of the plan is the implementation chapter. This is a very high-level overview of some of the different tools that you can use to implement this plan. It includes a short discussion on the annual budget, the capital improvement plan, how land use regulations and development review can be guided by the comprehensive plan, and then intergovernmental cooperation, particularly with Emporia being important. Each strategy is assigned an implementation type, a responsible party, and then a time frame or a priority. If you have any changes to the timeframes and priorities, we're happy to look at those at the final work session before the public hearing. And with that, I'll briefly cover next steps. So after today, we'll look forward to hearing any of your comments. I usually recommend a 30-day public comment period as a minimum. I will remind you all that this is really a courtesy review for the public. This is not our public hearing period, but it's a really great opportunity to use your social media or the different outlets that you have access to let your constituents know about this plan, gather any feedback, then we can talk through it at the next work session. We'll take any comments and make some decisions if there's any changes to be made, and then we can incorporate those after that final work session. Another component in addition to public comments is Vdot. So the comprehensive plan needs to be reviewed by Vdot. We're not recommending any major changes to roadways or realignments, so we shouldn't have any issues with Vdot, but they always offer a few comments that we want to make sure that we consider. And then with that, we would move forward through the public hearing process. In talking with staff today, we're anticipating that that would likely be around March, just given Vdot review timeframes and wanting to make sure there's ample time for public comment and obviously advertising for the public hearings. But we're happy to talk through that as well. I also, at the bottom of this slide and on the agenda as well, is a link to an exit survey. So we'll leave this open during the public comment period, even for those that weren't able to be here tonight. They can offer any comments through that website. My email is also on the next slide, that final slide. And then, of course, they can funnel any comments that they have through you all or Treva and Lynn as well. So with that, I'll stand ready to answer any questions that you all might have for tonight. All right, hearing none. I'm not seeing any members of the public that might have questions for us. I'll be available over here to just talk through any questions that anyone might have on the boards that we have over there or the future land use map. Otherwise, I thank you so much for your time. And again, would just encourage you all to share this plan with your constituents, and look forward to seeing you at the next joint work session.
I'd like to thank y'all for coming. Like she said, if you have any questions or concerns, you can call myself. Kathy can help. Kathy's there, help with the planning department, or Treva. Be glad to call us if you see something you think needs to be changed. Just give us a call, and we'll make notes and get back with the Berkeley group and try to get this in final format here shortly. I will get with the newspaper. I'd like to put an ad in the article so we can generate some more public comments. You know, we've advertised social media and the paper, and we don't have many people here tonight, but I will use the newspaper as a resource also to get this draft plan out so the public can view it. Hopefully we can get some comments.
Any more questions? Anyone? Comments? All right, we adjourn.
So moved.
Move in second that we adjourn. All in favor?